So, welcome everyone. This is episode 2, and we're going to be talking about suffering. I'm Heather,
And I'm Seth.
and let's just jump into it. I know there's a lot of suffering going on in the world, and people individually have a lot of their own types of suffering. So, first biggest question, is suffering necessary?
Well, what I would say in response to that, it's not whether or not it's necessary or it's this, that, or the other thing, but it certainly is. Suffering is a fact of life. It's something that just happens. And the way we respond to it, the way we look at it can kind of be, whether it empowers us or does the opposite, kind of disempowers us. So I think suffering, or what we perceive to be suffering, is more of like just a fact of life or a natural kind of effect of living in this world that is really off balance.
Do you think some people choose to suffer more than others? Do you think there's a choice
Absolutely.
involved?
Um, I would say there's many different layers to it. Yes, some people definitely suffer more than others. Um, but there's a lot of different components to it. There's a lot of different past life experiences, past memories, you know, remembrance of past kind of things kind of help people to anticipate what might be coming in the future. And in that regard, they kind of stay stuck in this trap of expecting to suffer because they're so used to suffering already.
I think that's the big thing of getting stuck in that trap, because if you've been burned by, let's say, a bad ex or a bad boss at a job or even an economic situation, you see the signs of that coming again and you're automatically fearful and you're automatically suffering whether or not it's going to play out in the same way because you go into it with that attitude.
And who hasn't gotten burned? Who
Oh,
hasn't had trauma from people who we think are closest to us?
yep.
Everybody has. Everyone.
Hmm.
So,
And it doesn't exclude any race, any economic situation, because poor people suffer. Rich people, like a lot of people look down on rich people because they've got so much money, but their lives are hard too, just for different reasons, and it's situational.
very situational. And a lot of what people do is instead of coming to a place where they begin to deal with their own suffering, they like to blame others or other circumstances or world events or anything except for themselves. They haven't gotten to a point where they can objectively look at themselves enough to take responsibility for A, why they might be suffering, and B, what they're able to do about it to alleviate that.
And I think that's a rough trap to get out of, because even early in life, people can get stuck in a victim mentality. It's not my fault. So and so did it to me. My parents said I couldn't do this. And it goes really far back into a lot of people's lives, and even later in life, like, oh, I broke my knee, so I can't do this. And then it leads to I can't. And it's very disempowering. So people don't take positive action. They just blame and feel bad.
It's probably generational too when you look at it because it's literally people have these belief systems and ideas about reality that aren't necessarily their own. They're passed down from their cultural beliefs, their familial beliefs, ancestral even. I mean, it can go back into forever. Just everybody's passing this stuff on down the line. And it wreaks havoc. So that's kind of like on the unconscious level that people are affected by all that. The way to overcome that is to realize that in many ways we are affected by a lot of this stuff without even realizing it.
Hmm.
So becoming conscious of, okay, I'm being bombarded by all kinds of thoughts, beliefs, feelings, ideas, and information that may not necessarily be something that is empowering me, and it can be working to disempower me.
Yeah,
You
it
know,
might not even be your own genuine thought or feeling. Like, whenever you feel a guilt or a shame, dig into that feeling. Like, it hurts. It's really not comfortable to be like, I feel shameful about this. I feel guilty about this. I feel like I'm sacrificing for things that aren't my own goals. Dig into it, really look inside yourself and see, why do I feel these feelings? And you'll find, sure, sometimes it's genuine, but sometimes it's taught. Like, other people will see me as this if I don't feel guilty for this. And start to wonder, what if I didn't feel guilty? What else can I do? What other choices can I make?
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. Very well said, for sure.
What about when we see other people suffering, like other people in our lives, people we care about, friends, family, schoolmates, workmates? If they're going through hard situations, um, what do you think is the most empowering and genuine way to try to help them without taking away the validity of their own suffering?
You know, it's a very multifaceted approach, and the only reason I have any awareness of any of this stuff at all is because I personally was, for a very long time, the biggest victim on the planet. And I really, really embodied this mindset of, the life is out to get me. It's out to make me suffer, to, you know, really trying to hurt me. But then I realized that I'm not that important, you know? Life is not zeroing in on me, but there's a lot that I'm doing in response to whatever life presents that keeps me down, that I'm allowed to keep me down. So when we see other people who are suffering, it's definitely it can be a challenge because everybody has different degrees that they're gonna engage in that kind of behavior with, and the way they're gonna take that on. So, I usually, if you can help somebody in a way that is going to actually get them out of it fairly quickly, then it's a good thing. But people who are suffering, the old saying, misery loves company. A lot of people are straight up addicted to suffering, and they don't even realize it. They have no idea. They just literally think that that is reality and that it's their reality. And they want you to fully engage and believe in that with them. So it can be difficult to navigate in this world because it's a very imbalanced world. We're very off balance on so many different layers of ourself, of our culture, of our species as a whole. So how do we help people? We definitely try if we can, and if they're not responding, get out of the way until you have enough strength to not let them take you down.
Yeah, that's a really hard thing because you want to be there for your friends and your family. You want to help them. You want to be around if they need support, but a lot of times they just need an ear to vent, to get all the negativity out, even if it's not going to make them more positive. And the challenge is going to be to stay positive through that. And I think it might be kind of annoying to people who are going through suffering for someone else to stay positive when they're assaulting them with their own negativity. So it's a balance. Like you have to accept their suffering and not try to be too positive, I think, because it might make them suffer more in a way.
Yeah, it gets them, it can cause all kinds of different negative responses and emotions because in a lot of the ways, like we were just talking about, they're not actually trying to feel better. They're just full on engaging in a habit. They're all like, "Ugh."
Yeah, they've already got their own drama spiral happening, and they're happy with it. I don't want to say happy, but they're satisfied. They're there's something satisfying about being in that kind of spiral. Maybe because I don't know. There's many reasons.
Well, believe me, I'm not a biologist or a neurologist or anything like that, but I think from a real simple perspective, the way with basic psychology, the way the brain is wired, whatever kind of intense event happens in our lives, no matter if it's positive or negative, it creates a flood, a rush of chemicals in the brain. And so, like a drug, we're almost kind of trying to recreate things that feed that chemical addiction to our response to life.
Yeah, it's that
You know,
intensity.
it's that intensity. And, a lot of people, like we said, a lot of this starts in the past when someone who we thought we loved or a situation that we were presented with caused us, some degree of trauma to a lesser degree, to a greater or a lesser degree, depending on what it was. And that almost kind of sets us up. That's like the first impactful event where, okay, it's imprinted in our memory. And so as we live in this world, we have that memory of that. And we almost kind of anticipate or expect things like that to come up. And depending on how strong that initial kind of event was or events were, then if events like that aren't happening as we go forward, we're almost kind of recreating them and wanting it to happen to get our fix.
So, like self-sabotage.
Absolutely, and it's chemical dependency. It's absolutely what it is, neurochemical and emotional dependency.
So let's look at something a little bit bigger, like world suffering, like large regions that are suffering, cultural suffering, impoverished countries, racial victimization. Um, like these are all pretty terrible things, and I'm going to go out on a limb and say that most people didn't consciously choose these situations in this lifetime. What do you think is the root of that?
So there are so many things in this world and in this reality that are so far beyond our human comprehension as we're used to perceiving it. So, I mean, just this room I'm sitting in right now, if I was to like suddenly become fully aware of every little detail in this tapestry behind me, or all the different fine textures of the carpet or of the ceiling, like if I was suddenly to become aware of all this information just in this little room around me, I would probably have a meltdown. It would probably cause my mind to short circuit and to create like a really dramatic, response, like something that would potentially harm me. And so when we think about world events or a collective thing, just really, really trying to put a lot of deep objective thought and intuition as to why all that stuff might be going on is something that can be so disempowering and so traumatizing that it's like a tricky thing. We almost have to not really give too much awareness to that until we know we have a strong core, a strong, solid center for ourselves. And it's when we have that center, and I'm speaking from my own experience, when I have this balanced state of being, where I'm more fully cognizant of the fact that I am an energy-based being living in a human body, and that my body has certain needs, and when I fulfill those needs in a way that I know is good and balanced, I remain balanced as a whole being. Then when I look out into the world and when I pay attention to some of the stuff going on in the world, I can approach it in a way that is more peaceful and more understanding because I'm having faith in life itself. And that's kind of the main thing. A lot of people will say, well, if there's suffering in the world and all this is going on, then there's no goodness in the world and life is bad and humanity is bad and all this stuff. And that's coming from a place of fear, but more than fear, it's coming from a place of we've been disempowered to the degree that we don't trust life itself, So.
And I think that's a perspective that people have a harder time considering because there are a lot of dramatic, terrible things happening in the world. There's been mass shootings, there's environmental disasters, there's starvation and lack of resources for people to survive. And it can be hard for someone to reconcile, yes, this bad shit is happening, and I want to help these people because I feel bad that this bad shit is happening. So maybe because bad shit is happening, I should also feel bad. But there's also a joy to be had. Like, if you're in a place where you're capable of having joy, of having life, then should you not feel guilty for enjoying it, for being jubilant that you're alive? And, I don't know. I'm not quite sure how to reconcile that.
No, that was, what you said was perfect. It's a great question and a great way to approach it. Should we feel bad about it? I mean, does that help anything at all, And that's why I said it's like, people are like, oh, well, why should we have so much and they have so little? It's like, look, we are all doing the best we can, no matter where we are, no matter who we are, no matter what our life circumstance is. The more we feel bad about things, the more we are kind of making a self-declaration that we don't trust our own inner life, And when you do begin to trust your own inner life, then you can actually positively effectuate things on a much greater level. But, how can we make a difference in this world? How can we change it and make it a better place if we don't really maintain a state of balance ourselves,
And that's kind of where I wanted to go with that. to make the world a better place, I'm not saying anyone's a bad person, but I'm saying be a better person, be a vibrant person, be an alive person, try to do good, help people, hold doors open, like all the little things that you see, like letting someone sit down on a bus, or saying thank you, or complimenting someone's shoes, or buying a homeless person a lunch. It's these little things that help on a small scale, but they grow on a bigger scale because they become societal movements. And I'm seeing it more and more. I've been on Facebook a lot, so I've been seeing a lot of very positive, empowering videos. Women banding together to keep away potential attackers. Other tribes that are protecting children, and it's empowering and it's fantastic. And I think it's a growing movement where if you do a small thing, a small good, and other people will notice, and they'll also do more small goods, and all those small goods together can make the world a better place.
Absolutely, absolutely 111%. But, in my own experience, it's like this. I know I have lots of different sides to me. There's these really profound, good states that I can engage in, and then there's very disempowered, victimized states. And it really comes down to recognizing that we all have, to a degree, a diabolical nature. It's in every single one of us, and really, essentially, what that is a result of a collectively off-balance world. So, what a lot of people they both don't recognize, and maybe aren't at a point in their life where they're really ready and willing to take full responsibility for it, is developing these inner virtues, you said being good, doing good. It's more like developing a virtuous state of mind so that you engage in the world in a way that positively effectuates it. That is, I can't, some of these buzzwords I don't even want to use, but talk about spiritual practice, like that is a huge part of the human component of spiritual practice. When you really, compassion, empathy, love, respect, helping others, doing all these things, those things take a lot of effort. They really do. And they take a lot of effort, especially if you're coming from a place of being a victim. But with you recognizing, okay, if I'm going to change all this wiring in my brain that's used to getting my trauma fixes that I'm used to experiencing throughout my life, the way I'm going to override all that old programming is to develop a new way of interacting with myself, my actual physical body, and with the world around me. And it can be very, very hard at first because this old programming, the stuff that's there, it doesn't really want to change because you've created a neural network that supports that continued behavior. So the way around that is to create a new neural network of positive behaviors, good behaviors, loving, compassionate, and slowly, maybe sometimes more rapidly, over time, you kind of push that old programming down and you've recreated this new self that is acting in those good ways as a much more second nature kind of thing. It becomes a more automatic response where at first it's difficult, it becomes a learned thing, but it's learned because you're teaching yourself to learn it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's exactly true, because it's not just I'm going to think this way now. It's not an instant process. It's a long process because you're physically changing the wiring of your brain. And for some people, they're in the health, or they're in the already mindset where they can change faster. Other people have more impairments, they have more challenges, and it takes a longer time. But since it's a physical process as well as a thought process, it takes time, and you have to constantly work at it because your brain is not a physical muscle, but you have to work it like a muscle so that it learns.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I always go back to perception, human perception in and of itself. My own perception, I'll say, is absolutely like a muscle. When you flex your muscle and you work out hard and you build your body muscles and then you relax, it's in relaxing that growth occurs. Mm-hmm. The same thing happens with trying to recreate a new way of interacting with the world. It's really difficult to do, and you go out and you do what you can, and then you sit back down like, okay, I just did good. I tried to help people, and I'm exhausted for the day,
Yeah.
because it's not the way you're used to doing things. But you do a little bit of it every day. And then day by day, it becomes easier. It becomes a more automatic response. And so then you begin to reclaim your power, your inner power of being in alignment with a better state of reality. But the opposite, which a lot, see, the thing is all the stuff we're saying, a lot of people aren't really ready to take that kind of responsibility because it is hard work, you know, going into a gym and exercising or going for whatever, a heavy duty 90-minute yoga class and then meditating for an hour and a half after, or whatever anybody does, any kind of, that stuff takes work.
Hmm.
But it's not only work, it's not just the physical work. There's a mental, emotional, and really a more energetic kind of component to it of you have to have the passion. You have to really want to change yourself and do it for reasons that you want to reclaim yourself. You have to have that passion in order to be able to do these things. But a lot of people won't. And a lot of people will just say, oh, it's hard work, I don't care. I'm just going to be the way I am, which is based on the way it was, which isn't in reality. And so they're a victim. And they're a perpetual victim, and misery loves company.
Yep, and it's especially hard at the beginning of a process because you try a change and it's hard and you suffer because it's a change. And you're like, I give up after one day. You're like, I'm not even going to try. But it's all a path, like it's all a journey. No one is perfect. I don't have all the answers. You don't have all the answers. We might not have all the answers for someone else. And that's great because everybody has to go down their own path. So the goal is just to find what's true and right for you, what works for you, what validates you. And it's messy and it can be hard or it can be easy. It can be joyful, it can be full of tears, but and there's suffering along every path because even when you start along trying to make yourself better, trying to make the world better, it's hard, so you suffer. But I think along that process you have to forgive yourself for any missteps you may have made, may currently be making, will make in the future. Be gentle with the fact that it is hard and sometimes you need a break, sometimes you need to relax, and you're not going to be perfect, and it's okay.
That's exactly where the growth occurs. I mean, if we didn't have that contrast, if we didn't have these things, this resistance, then what would we push past?
Hmm.
You know? And if this stuff was easy, then wouldn't we already be living in a world that was very much balanced?
Yep. One of my favorite phrases, growth does not happen in a vacuum. Growth doesn't happen alone. You have to test your knowledge, you have to see results, and it's a scientific experiment. You have to see what works for you. And the point is to keep growing. You know, a lot of people will get stuck, and I say a lot of people because I observe a lot of people in my personal life, so I can't speak to vast populations. But people will get stuck at a point in their life where they're comfortable, when what they have is good enough, and they don't feel like pushing. Whether it's their attitude or their financial situation, their house, their figure, you know, they'll get to a point and be like, okay, I'm done, and they won't keep going. Like, why would you stop there? Like, you've investigated this much, and there's like this much more that you can see, and how much deeper can you go with it? Like, are you not excited about doing good things, about achievements, about making the world a more remarkable place? Like, do you want to stay stuck? Okay. And you have to accept where people are. Like, you can't push them. External pushing will only honestly breed resentment, because I've made so many people mad at me because I tried to help and it didn't work.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very much, it takes tremendous discernment when trying to navigate these things, it really does. But what are we going to do? Give up, and
Oh.
like you said, but it's, part of it too, and a lot of people kind of maybe touch on this stuff, but as children, we're very passionate. We're very much alive with awe and wonder, and, we wanted to experience the world, but then whatever a thing or things begin to happen that that allow us, or almost in a way trick us, maybe not even trick us. Sometimes traumatic things happen, and suddenly we're not so convinced that the world is full of awe and wonder. And that really, really impacts the way we perceive reality going forward. And, you know, one thing that really helped me a lot with coming to terms with this, and I know not everybody is going to do this stuff, but I actually wrote my entire life story out. I wrote it from beginning to up until the point that I was when I wrote it a few years ago. And, not everybody's going to sit down and do something like that. But if people were to sit down and write out past events, things that are really impactful, things that they remember, and just kind of almost bullet pointing it, then a couple things happen. You get it out of you. The stuff that's in you that you might not even be so fully aware of is affecting your life experience in this moment. You get it out of you, you write it down, and then you also are able to look at patterns. And these patterns can be very revealing of the way in which you currently perceive the world and the way that you interact with others. So that's a technique that helped me tremendously. When I wrote everything out and I was able to, oh my God, there's a full-blown pattern. Full-blown. I mean, there it is right in front of me. I always kind of suspected it and knew it, but until I actually saw it, I wasn't as aware of it as I became. So
I think there's a lot of self-identification with some traumatic events in our past. A lot of suffering that we've gone through, we identify ourselves by it and we turn them into repeating patterns. How many people have childhood experiences that were defined by their suffering and they keep showing up in their life because they're unresolved. They keep dwelling on that fact, so they unconsciously create those situations. Whether it's home life or first job or school or relationships they've been in. There's various things where people were in intense suffering and they just keep repeating that pattern. So writing out your life story, I actually had a coach one time tell me, write out your life story and be prepared because you will cry. And she was right, because there's a lot of hard things in our past. But also it reminds you of the good things, like how did you grow? What did you learn? What are the joyful parts? Those are the big takeaways. So recognizing those patterns and then seeing where the breakdown in your life happens and then doing something different. And I'm not going to lie, every time that I chose to do that something different, it was hard. I was like, what am I doing? This sucks. I don't want to do this. I did it because it's growth. That's where it happens.
I love what you just said. How many people, just observing people, how many people have you noticed in your life and around you who are like that? Who maintain that kind of mentality?
Not many.
And how many maintain the opposite mentality?
Quite a few.
It's like almost collectively imprinted. It's almost like we're taught to not be empowered, but we don't realize that we aren't really even taught. All this conspiracy theory stuff is there's one conspiracy theory that mattered, in my opinion, for whatever that's worth, one conspiracy theory that matters above and beyond all else, and that is that the forces of life themselves are always bringing you situations, people, places, and things, no matter what those things look like, for your own personal growth and development. It's just whether or not, to me, that's the only conspiracy that matters, is whether or not that's going on. And the more I develop that, the more I understand it, the more I'm able to help in this world. And so,
as many negative conspiracy theories are out there, they're trying to get us, the New World Order, these things, those things to harm us, to poison our food, to drug us. Yeah, sure, I'm sure some of these things are happening. I'm not discounting that, but I'm also not getting lost in the negativity, because the universe is also conspiring to help, because it's showing you things and it's testing you. How are you going to react? What are you going to learn? And what are you going to do about it? So it's not just, oh, this bad shit's happening. It's, how can I be a good shit?
Absolutely, and it's really easy to, all that fear porn, right? That's what they call it, porn. And absolutely, all that stuff probably is happening and it's going on, But how many people? It's so disempowering. It's like, okay, be aware of it. It is going up, but are you going to give your thoughts and your feelings? It's again, we're focusing on the way things appear to be, and we're really just not giving attention to developing our own inner state, where our balance is, where our ability to live in harmony with a greater whole is. Because, yeah, people are effed up. They're messed up. A lot of people are. They're just terrible. But in a lot of ways, can we blame them?
Mm-mm.
I try not to. And I really, the more you look at it, it's like a lot of this is passed down. It's learned behavior. And it's people who are functioning from a very shallow, small part of themselves. So what's the better thing to do is blame them for it? If they actually knew what it was like to live from a more holistic sense, they would treat people very different. They would conduct their own behavior very different because they would recognize that it does have personal ramifications, And as much as we perceive the world around us, the world that we do perceive with our normal senses is about that big compared to what's really going on.
Yeah.
So the earth and the people here and everything that our species is doing, everybody is so identified with only their human selves and how that human self relates to all the other human selves that we forget we're part of a living ecosystem, a living biosphere. We're part of a solar system, a galaxy, a universe, potentially. I mean, we're part of all these things all the time. And so one little part of our human self that is obviously in such a destructive way, is that what we're going to focus on? Just because everyone else around us is focusing on it, or most are focusing on it, at some point we have to take a personal stand, And believe me, I'm not saying, oh, I figured it out. No, I just got to a point in my life where I didn't want to suffer like that anymore because there's tremendous suffering in being a human being and being part of this collective human experience that there is so much suffering in. So at what point do we as individuals take a stand and say, you know what? I don't have to allow that to take me down. I don't have to allow that to disempower me, and I'll just live a life of mediocrity until I pass from this world, and who cares about anything? No, because it's not living in accordance with reality. This greater reality is here now. People are like, oh, what do the planets or anything or stars have to do with us on this life right now? It's like, common sense, people. The sun is 93 million miles away, and you're telling me that doesn't have an effect on things here?
My sunburn will tell you differently.
Yeah, exactly. Like, again, there's so much more than any of us are able to perceive. And even those of us who are able to perceive a tremendous amount will tell you that whatever it is we're perceiving isn't anything, and we're all infants, and we're all children forever.
Mm-hmm.
But at what point do we, as individuals, step back, realize, like, okay, I'm almost mindlessly engaging in BS, And at what point am I going to break that chain and start to develop these inner traits? And when I do feel like I'm suffering, maybe it is life. Do I trust life enough to learn from what it's offering me, even if I do perceive it as suffering?
Mm-hmm.
We can get to a point where we can learn to trust life, even in our suffering, and that is empowerment.
I completely agree. It's seeing your own suffering and saying, this sucks. What is it trying to teach me? Once you're at that point, like, then it just becomes kind of like a spiral. You just keep questioning, and it's where you go with your questioning that's going to determine where you go as a person, and it's all growth, because that's where you learn. And it's almost inevitable at that point that you stop having that victim mentality, that fear-based mentality, because you can't. You just stop being afraid. You stop feeling like a victim because you have so much choice. Like, you have so much choice to feel the suffering, and you can feel suffering for any reason and be okay with it. It sucks, but it's still part of the process. It's still progress, and you almost have to be grateful for it because it shows you maybe this isn't a situation you want to be in right now. Maybe it's a situation you don't want to repeat. Maybe it's warning you of danger. Maybe, there's a million reasons, but it's there to teach you something. So maybe take a look at it as a gift. It sucks, but it's there for your growth. It's there for you to learn something from.
Have you, how many times have you felt this come up in your life? Like when you almost have a choice, like, okay, I can suffer or I can face my suffering and then grow as a result. How many times have you experienced that in your life? And when you commit to it, you do grow, right?
Yes. And the first time I finally got this clue, I was in college. I was going to CCAC, community college, and I was reading this book, The Three Pillars of Zen. It's probably still my favorite book. It's a little mint green thing. It was the first book that actually really made me deeply think. And I read it cover to cover, and I did it again, and I embedded itself, great English there. I'm
still learning to speak myself.
The principles kind of embedded themselves in my mind, and it was a very huge time of self-growth for me because I had an extremely limited mindset growing up. So going through college and then getting out on my own, and through a whole lot of events, and then going back to a limited mindset for a while because it happens, and then realizing what I was doing. I moved back in with my parents, and it wasn't a good time overall. It was with a guy that very limiting beliefs, and then one day after 5 or 6 years of this, I'm like, no, this is not okay. This is not who I am. I don't even feel like me. I don't even remember who I am. So it started a completely new process, and I sort of reinvented myself because the old me was dead, the other old me was dead. So who do I want to be? What about my life sucks? What do I want to change about it? Who do I want to be? You start asking the big questions, and it's hard. Because you have to be in front of all your friends and all your loved ones, and they watch you go through the process, and it's messy, and you try shit, and you throw ideas against a wall, and sometimes they don't stick. And that's its own kind of suffering, because it feels almost like shame. You're like, I had an idea, and it didn't work. Shit. But you still want to be something bigger. You still want to be a bigger force in the world, to do good, to have a positive message, even if your positive message is, I make paintings. Okay, do your paintings. You love it, so do it. Don't let anyone, is broad advice, sorry, but,
Yep, absolutely.
People feel a lot of shame. People let themselves be told, oh, don't do that thing, it's silly. Do the thing. If you love the thing, do the thing. Not doing the thing is causing you suffering. Whether it's making silly little cat paintings, or whether it's making cupcakes, or whatever you do, you really need to do it. It doesn't matter what it is, but do it. Don't squash that individual part of yourself, because I think that's its own really deep, soul-crushing kind of suffering, and I think that's a big root of the problem. We crush ourselves because we have these societal and cultural standards that we're taught from the time we're babies, and we're taught to squash our individuality. School kids don't share a lot about themselves, they just want to fit in so they don't get bullied or so they don't stand out, but it's those individual aspects that make the world a unique and beautiful and wonderful place. That's where the positivity comes from, not from the oppression of hiding yourself from other people.
Very well said. Exactly. So in your experience, when you've tasted a little bit of that growth, what do?
I want more.
Right. Exactly. And that's what people don't get. It's that initial effort that you put in when you really, really make a commitment to doing that, and you get a little bit of results. That's all you really need to do to get momentum. Because like you said, even if you go back into a limited mindset or whatever, you still had that. You're creating new memories. You have a new by doing this stuff. It's not that memories of the past or anticipation of the future is bad. It's that you want to recreate new memories that support your continued efforts going forward to grow as an individual.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when memory and remembrance of things is a really positive thing. And everything you just said is that. That's what you did. You went through it like you flex your perceptive muscles, you know. You came from a limited mindset, you flex your perceptive muscles, then you might have fallen back, but then you got back up and kept going.
Mm-hmm.
That's growth. That's building that, you know, that muscle of
It just doesn't stop. Like at some point, it just becomes an avalanche. Just stop.
Yeah, right. Full on momentum. Because, you know, our human species is very much in a contracted state, you know. Very few of us are even neutral, but the nature of reality, from a very simple physics, the universe is in a state of expansion. The actual physical universe is in a state of expansion. So why should we, as individuals, as our human selves, as these energy-based beings living in a body, why shouldn't we, or why can't we choose to be in a state of expansion with it? Because then we're kind of more in alignment with reality.
Right.
I think, anyway.
And I think there's a lot of conflict between expansion and wastefulness. There's a big difference, because some people view expansion as using more resources, as killing trees, using up oil and gas and things that we're not going to get back in the near future. But that's not really it. It's expanding your thought process. Like, you don't need stuff. So many people try to make up for a lack of personal fulfillment, that squashing of your soul. They try to make up for that hole in their lives with stuff. And that doesn't work. Like, sure, money can make you happy. Sure, stuff can make you happy. But you're just going to keep feeding that in the same way, instead of looking and seeing, like, look, I've got all this stuff and I'm miserable. You know? So fill your head instead of filling your house.
Yeah, you're not addressing the root cause of why, you know, you suffer, or why things seem to, you know, whatever physical, material things are just really, all they really are there for is to help support us to more deeply do this inner work, you know? And it's not what everybody uses it for, but if we choose to view it from that perspective, then these things really can be effective tools to kind of take not only us in our own personal development to the next level, but also our efforts to help the world, to take our efforts in helping the world to a next level. So
I think that's the right game plan. You know, see it and feel it and question it and then grow.
And commit to it and have the passion to do it. Like, remember, we love life, you know, that everybody at one point or another, you know, maybe excluding a few, we love life. We really do. You know, it's our human selves that suffer, you know, and that's the part we're so overly identified with that we've stopped identifying with the other part of ourselves, you know, the really practical part of ourselves, the heart, the energy that's causing our heart to beat, our lungs to breathe up, like that's also who we are. Everybody's so stuck up in this one little tiny part of their head that they don't even really recognize what it's like to be in the rest of their bodies.
Yeah, they're so stuck in, how am I going to pay the mortgage? I need a new car. I need to do this thing. People expect these other things of me, without thinking, who am I? What am I? Why do I exist?
And they go through life unhappy, feeling like a victim, and suffering. And it's such a rampant issue. It's affecting so many people on so many different levels that, again, like this whole talk has been, at what point are we just going to stop giving our attention to all that in light of first developing an inner core, an inner place that we can then interact with it without it draining us and causing us to be more negative? And that's what it takes.
Yep. So it's a question of which spiral you want to be.
You're either going up or down. Unfortunately, that's the extremes. Like, the real good place would be in the middle of that, kind of balance, unaffected by both. But we'll get there if we choose. You know, but right now it's either one or the other. It's like most things seem to be going down, but those of us who choose to go up, we kind of counter that negative balance And that, by all of us going up, that kind of helps bring about this other balance into the whole,
Exactly.
methinks, for whatever it's worth.
Well, I think I've covered all the big questions I had for you. Do you have any further thoughts on the idea of suffering and how to grow beyond it?
You know, maybe we'll have to do another. We could do so much more just in this one topic. I would like to hear you talk a lot more about women's suffering and how the feminine aspect of not only humanity but of our planet and everything suffers as a result of this kind of patriarchal reign of terror that we are collectively experiencing as a species.
Absolutely, and I would love to talk about it. There was one video, actually, I referenced earlier on this talk, where many situations of women ganging up together to defend other women from assault, from verbal abuse, and I love that, because I think one of the biggest reasons, there are many, that women suffer so much is because we snipe at each other. We look at other women and be like, those heels look ridiculous. She went tanning. What are you spending money on this time? Like, we snipe each other for stupid bullshit. Like, hey, you love those heels. Great. I wouldn't wear them. Look great on you. Fantastic. Oh, you spent $5,000 on a purse. That's great. You love it. I wouldn't buy it, but go for it. You know, empowering each other and sticking together. Because that's where a lot of our victimization happens. Like, we'll see another woman and she'll be being victimized, and sometimes people just stand by and be like, sucks to be her, she wore that short skirt. No, she likes that skirt. Maybe tell the other dude to lay off of her. Because you know what? Even if she wore the longer skirt, that dude would have found somebody else to victimize. So it's not about control yourself. It's about band together and accept each other. And that's something that even a lot of men are getting behind, because it's really terrible the way that culture encourages victimization of women. You know, blaming them for terrible acts that happen to their bodies. You know, blaming them for assault and thievery and for bad decisions. You know what? Dudes make bad decisions too. Dudes make stupid fashion choices, but you know what? They like them or they don't care. Maybe it's not important to them. You know, it's taking away the blame and coming back together as a tribe. I see a lot of sisterhood groups coming up, a lot of tribes coming up, and I love it because it's empowering each other. It's not saying, oh no, if you're not wearing these kinds of clothes, you can't be one of us. No, it's saying, I don't give a shit what you wear. You're a woman. We accept you. Great. You know, and it's happening all over the world. There's a tribe in India of exclusively women who protect women and children. Like, they get girls out of child marriages. Why this is a cultural tradition, I still can't handle, but that's a great deal of suffering for those children and for that culture, and major props to that tribe of women who's like, no, we're done. You know, it's not necessarily taking power back, but it's rebalancing the power structure. Because our world has been very, I'm really trying hard not to be sexist here, but it's been very male-dominated. You know, it's a very...
No, you absolutely can be sexist, because the other component of this is that the same element that is kind of beating down women and kind of battering the feminine thing is also beating down the feminine element in men.
Mm-hmm.
You know, men are taught to not embrace that part of themselves.
To not be sensitive, to not have emotions, that it's not okay. Just man up. No.
And that just further has men continuing to treat women and the feminine aspect like crap because of it. So
yeah, it creates a divide, and there shouldn't be any divide. Like, yes, male energy and female energy, different, equal. Like, we contribute to the universe in different ways, and everyone is on a different male-female energy spectrum too. So it's not just like, you have boobs, you're a woman. You have a penis, you're a man. Like, no, it is not that straightforward. But it coming together, it creates a better balance. So that if you need more gentleness or nurturing or more growth, maybe having a little bit more female energy in the mix is going to help. You know, if you need more direct action, if you need more aggressiveness, maybe having a little bit more masculine energy would help. And and it shouldn't be used as insulting terms for either gender. Like, if a woman is aggressive, she's called a bitch. And that shouldn't be true. She's simply aggressive. She has goals. She knows what she wants, and she's going to get them. Because if a man took the same actions that she was taking, well, he'd be a successful businessman, not a bitch.
Right.
If you call a man a bitch, it's insulting. You're saying he's like weak or stupid or, doesn't take action or is somehow lesser than other men. Like, even look at that contrast right there. It's an insult to women to be a bitch, and it's an insult to men to be a bitch for completely different reasons.
Mm. This is a huge topic. I think we're going to have to really riff on this in the future because there's a lot of different components about it. And ultimately, what it kind of all leads to is this restoration of inner balance. Because when we as individuals take responsibility for those different aspects of ourselves, they eventually kind of come together to form a whole within us.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, because we all embody all energies, just to a different level.
And to what degree are we aware of those energies, and do we want to cultivate and develop them for a more balanced perspective of reality?
Mm-hmm. I love it.
Well, it's great. What do you think? This has been a great talk, huh?
I think it's been pretty fantastic. I've had a good time on this conversation, and I hope our viewers have also had a good time because there's some eye-opening things. There's a lot of things that I think either people need to hear or have been waiting to hear. So, and I hope it spurs some good conversation because I'm really looking forward to talking to some of our viewers and seeing their perspective.
Absolutely. Talk to us, write comments, love us, hate us, whatever. Just send it over. We love the feedback, and we just want to know if people like this stuff. So.
Yes, and ideas, because if you have something that's burning in your mind that you want us to talk about, give us a shout out. We'll be happy to cover it for you. All right, it has been great, guys. I'm Heather.
And I'm Seth.
And we'll talk to you again soon.